Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Heartland Mamas.
I'm Heidi Henry, and I'm in your face today because, Murray, we're talking about the two Supreme Court cases that are going to affect our friends in the LBGTQ community.
Absolutely.
And coming to you from the edge of the Great Red Divide, I realize that this is not a conversation that we always have in the Great Red Divide.
And this is the first one we've really delved into as our podcast.
Right. It's been, my lifetime has been surrounded by people that are from the LGBTQ community. I never really thought of them as that. I just thought of them as friends and neighbors, relatives.
Right.
So I didn't really realize, I think until I was an adult, that there was this division, right? And that people would put labels and try to put people in boxes based on, to me, and I know you hate it when I play the God card, but based on how God made them, because we are all different and we are all unique. And the fact that you're LGBTQ does not make you a less valuable, viable, vibrant person.
And I think that's an excellent point that you just made. I feel the exact same way, that there is absolutely no reason why anyone, no matter what their preference is or what their genetic drive is, and I don't know which it is, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And none of it matters. We're all human beings.
Yes.
We all deserve respect.
Right.
My opinions about something affect my life and how I live, but it doesn't affect anyone else's life and how they live. But therefore, we should all logically, empathetically, legally allow everyone to live their life.
Right. And
you bring a spiritual perspective to it.
Well, and the way I look at it is it does impact us when we see people we love, people we care about, people we know being oppressed just because of how they are. I mean, it would be like, I don't know, Murray, I can't even really wrap my head around why this is targeted, except that we target things like this to divide us. And divided, we fail. United, we stand.
Do you know what happened with the Supreme Court case?
No, why don't you tell us all about that? Because
Herr Führer decided is
president.
The one that was pushing this case to come to the forefront.
Are you serious?
He is the one that was pushing this case. And then as they got ready to approach the Supreme Court, he completely flipped the DOJ attorneys that were working in both capacities.
Oh my God.
So he is the one who is forcing this attack on the people whom he said, remember, I'm going to be so great for the LGBTQ community. I'm awesome. And he's the one pushing this narrative.
And the narrative here, one of the cases involves somebody who went away for 2 weeks that had been living transgender, correct?
She was a funeral home director.
Okay.
She had worked for 10 years at a funeral home as a man and had been living quietly outside of work as a woman. Mm-hmm. So she had taken vacation time, and she explained to the owners that when she came back, she would be a woman, and this is how she would be living her life. She came back and she was fired.
That is outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous. Outrageous.
I know.
I've worked with a lot of funeral directors in my time as being a floral designer in my lifetime. And when I went to college, I studied horticulture, and floriculture was part of that. So I've met a lot of funeral directors. I'm telling you, when you're in the casket or talking to a grieving family, nobody cares if you're transgender. Nobody. Who would care?
And it doesn't. I even wonder if people would know. How would anyone even know if someone was? Now, that's up to the person who is to decide how open about their situation they want to be. You had a woman who was transgender who worked for your campaign.
Right.
And she was very open about it. She was very open, and this is who I am, and she would tell everyone, where I've also met other, a vice president who worked for Steve's company also made the transition.
Yeah.
And he was very quiet about it. No one knew until he came back as a woman. So, and then he didn't discuss it. He didn't bring it up. He kept it very quiet, but that was personal for him.
It's a very personal decision.
Absolutely.
And the young
whatever
woman
your decision you want to make is your decision to make.
The young woman that worked for me, I mean, it wasn't even an issue in hiring. I hired the person, not the gender, right?
Absolutely.
So, but that's how I look at things. You know, I don't, life is hard enough, and when you have to put people in separate boxes and columns.
Which brings us to the second part of this case, which is extremely interesting. So the first part, the arguments that were being made were that by
transitioning,
being transgender, you would embark upon dress codes for sexes, and whether those dress codes, they would have to apply to them. And so Gorsuch said,
any way you can divide and conquer people, I'm telling you, over dress code, for real, Murray, I'm outraged.
I know, but based on sex, and because you can't have dress code based on sex.
I've met funeral directors, male and female, they always wear a dark suit.
Period. Right? Like, there wasn't anything, it wasn't even related to the case, but that's the argument that he's making. He feels like we would need judicial modesty in order to let the social upheaval happen through Congress and not the courts.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the phrase judicial modesty. Are you serious? Judicial modesty? Judicial modesty. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that mean? Because I think it means bullshit.
Yes,
sorry.
I concur.
I swore on our podcast again. I am in your face today because this is outrageous. It's outrageous that we're discussing this in 2019.
So the real argument, and we'll go into the final argument portion of it, but the second portion is discrimination of a gentleman who was gay. And his company found, or he was a teacher.
Yeah.
And they found out that he was a homosexual, and they fired him.
I had lots of wonderful gay teachers when I was in junior high and high school. I mean, who cares? I had lots of wonderful teachers that weren't homosexual in high school.
Well, and here's the argument that his attorney was making is that she's talking about, Title VII again.
Yeah.
But she's talking about you're discriminating based on sex because of who he chooses to date.
Yeah.
So if a man, would you also fire that woman for dating a man?
Was he dating another teacher?
No.
So it wasn't even anything within the school.
No.
It was just what goes on after you leave the school is all of our business.
Well, and in education, especially in smaller areas, that...
He wasn't out there selling meth or axe murdering people, for God's sake. He was
teaching, and he was a great teacher. And
he was going on a date, and he got penalized for going on a date. Listen, dating is hard enough. I have 2 adult children. I stay out of their dating lives, but just listening to them talk about dating, I can't imagine losing your job. Where do we live?
Well, now listen.
I know.
So the 4 liberal justices are like, you're out of your frickin' mind. This is set and we decided this, it's over and
in the
done.
60s.
The 4 conservative justices are...
Well, they want to pander to their base.
They don't want to have anything fall on their head, which was sort of the repetitive thought of, it's not our job to decide, as one justice, quote, said, social upheaval that would be caused by the transgender case. I'm sorry, it just
social
upheaval.
They rule against this, and there'll be social upheaval. I mean, seriously, you rule against people for how they're made,
for who they date,
for who they are, for who they date. Yeah, there'll be social upheaval.
So, the terrifying thought is that we have 4 liberal and 4 conservative justices. Mm-hmm. There's one more justice.
And we all know his name.
And the fate of the LGBT community rests on this guy.
And his name is?
Neil Gorsuch.
Yeah, and we know where he came from. Who appointed him?
The Federalist Society.
Yes.
Came through.
And we did a show on the Federalist Society. And
Absolutely.
It's one of our most viewed and listened to recordings. And if you haven't listened to it or seen it, go see it, because we really took a deep dive on
Absolutely.
On the Federalist Society.
And the judicial system and how it works.
How they're stacking the courts, and
Absolutely.
how it's basically two people who are deciding our fate.
In fact, Herr Fuhrer even made a comment yesterday on Twitter
Trump.
about how many federal judges they had gotten on the court. Well, I think they're done with that. After this whole little Turkey incident, I don't think that the Senate's going to be putting anybody else on the court.
The reason that the evangelicals and Mike Pence backs our current president is because they want to stack the court to address women's rights, women's health care rights, and they'll call it abortion, but it's really women's rights. And they want to address LBGTQ. And anybody who lives in Indiana or has had Mike Pence as a governor knows how repressed that state is. I think we need to do an Indiana intervention, seriously. And I have to go there in a couple weeks.
I'm good.
I'm going to be coming to visit you, Indiana.
In speech in college, I used to get... we used to have to go to Indiana or drive through Indiana on our way to Ohio.
It was a nightmare driving through Indiana when we drove through a couple weeks ago.
And we did it quite a bit in college, because every weekend you were on the road for 3 months going to some state.
Right.
And I'll tell you, it always terrified me, because you would see white blonde mom, white blonde dad, and like 8 little white blonde ducklings behind. There was never a person of color or...
You must have been in the southern part of the state.
Oh, the whole state. I've been all over the whole state. But this was 25 years ago.
Well,
okay, this isn't today. This is 25 years ago. And I used to be like, oh, this place is Stepford Land. It scared me.
Well, my problem was the God installations every 30 miles.
Oh, Lord, honey. There's less of them than there were 25 years ago. I'm just going to tell you. But back to
what we were talking about.
Where we were.
Sorry, Indiana, but we're going to have to come in and save you.
Yeah. Let's hope we can get you going the way Southwest Iowa Democrats have. Wouldn't that be brilliant? Let's do that. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Mm-hmm. So the whole argument she's making that has actually caught Gorsuch's attention is that they can't discriminate based on who you date, because it goes back to the Title VII and base sexual...
Title VII,
yeah. And sexual harassment. And so if you don't punish both people for dating men, you can't punish one. And Gorsuch is, at least he's appearing to be fairly torn on the textual reading. The argument is strong enough and upholds the original law enough that he's really thinking about whether or not they do it. Now, if he decides to go socially, or he follows through with, unfortunately he probably will, well,
here's my thing. You like to think that the Supreme Court justices are of the highest esteem, that they are...
Well, we know Kavanaugh's not.
Well, here's the problem with that. It's not the same way as it used to be. We had... It's become very political, and unfortunately, even though it is a lifetime appointment, they still have... when Scalia died, he was at a supporter's place. He wasn't on official business, but he was at a major donor for the Republican Party at their place of recreation. So these people are not in a vacuum.
They're not independent.
They're not independent, and they're
that's
influenced.
The thing about law.
Yeah.
That's one thing that is so...
It's supposed to be free of those things.
Yes. It's supposed to be...
Reason free of politics.
And it is...
It
isn't that way anymore. It hasn't been for the
political.
last 25 years. Maybe even last 30 years.
Well, I would say that it started becoming political under Reagan.
Yes.
And has become huge. And part of that...
And here's another thing. The liberal justices... Now, I know there's interpretations of the law, and everybody has their own slant. But I'm sorry. even as a strict constitutionalist,
Yes.
the way they interpret some of these laws doesn't fit that. It only works for, they manipulate it to work for what they want. When you look at the more liberal justices,
Yes.
theirs is actually the broadest interpretation of the law.
Right.
And that's what it should be. It shouldn't be
Yes.
the narrowest interpretation of the law.
Exactly.
And that is why it is so frustrating and why so much is going to be happening. Louisiana is going to be going to the Supreme Court for their reduction of women's health care rights. They have made it so incredibly difficult that there is one place in Louisiana and no one else can open up. No, Louisiana too now. No one else can open up because the regulations are just ridiculously, and they're completely separate from even hospital. Doctors can't get privileges to work at the hospitals because of the services that they provide. So that's going to be going before, but we also have 6 other cases, heartbeat laws, that we are going to be in front of the courts.
Well, Maria, and I know that that's going away from the actual cases we're discussing today, but there is a big push from the Federalist Society and from the evangelicals to target fertility clinics.
Absolutely.
And the problem with that is, and you know, I've been pretty open about my own struggles with fertility. We couldn't afford the treatments. And when you go through those issues, and I have several adult friends, and I have a lot of my kids' friends are going through this right now. It is such an emotional roller coaster. And to put this additional pressure on, specifically to impinge women, they're not protesting outside of sperm banks, they're protesting outside of in vitro clinics. So again, it's the inner plumbing that's being attacked, not the exterior plumbing that's attacked. And I fear for where we're headed. More repression, more separation from one another. And when we are separated from one another, when we are pitted against one another,
defined by labels that don't make any sense.
Those that are in charge, and there's only a handful of people, if they keep pitting us against each other with this nonsense, we will never be able to move forward.
And then I guess another question about moving forward comes into play. So Title VII was 1964.
Yeah.
A lot of, mostly everything is based off of Title VII and the challenges that occur.
And
we have a lot of laws that
are
antiquated or outdated or society has changed.
Yes.
And we do get those slightly addressed, but in a situation like we're currently in, Congress is so busy trying to stop
the bleeding,
all of the horrible things that
hemorrhaging.
We can't focus or have any energy to work because of division, to work on the things that we need to update. So it does fall to the courts. It is the court's responsibility because it will never happen if not. And that's terrifying because of the fifth, the swing justice.
Well, and I think we've known in the last 3 years more than any other time in our country's history how fragile our democracy really is, that there's no such thing as settled law anymore. And we're fortunate enough to live in Illinois, which has a very forward-thinking governor at this time. But if we get another...
By the way, shout out to Governor JB. I just read some recent polls.
Yeah.
This is the first time in 6 years that they have polled at this time, 10 months in, and 48% of people, it was like 38% of people felt that the state was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
38% doesn't seem like a lot, but a year ago, it was like 12%.
Terrible
so
governor a year ago.
It's improved 200% in 10 months. Everybody is optimistic. The polls were great. I mean, I'm pretty excited about Illinois.
We know that the country has an economic downturn, a big one coming, a big one. And our governor, Governor Pritzker, shout out JB, has done a lot of things to help insulate Illinois from impending doom, and it's coming. And, the economic...
I don't even hear anyone complaining about the gas tax. I haven't heard one person complaining that the gas went up 3 cents a gallon.
No,
nobody
cares.
In real life.
Nobody cares.
Because all of a sudden, I'm driving and I have to pull over for construction, but my car isn't blowing out a tire on the highway.
There's so many wonderful things that have happened.
And nobody cares.
And, well, everybody's excited because road construction means stuff is getting done. Under our previous governor, they would lay out the cones and then they'd have to pick them up because they didn't have any money. Now, Indiana, you all put out the cones and you just leave them up year round with the thing, making your people think that maybe something's going to get done. In Illinois, we get stuff done. So, it's a great time to live in Illinois. And
we protect the LGBTQ community.
We protect
women. We protect
our children.
We protect people of different races, ethnicities, religions.
And we welcome them here.
Absolutely.
And we're doing great strides towards protecting our elderly, our veterans, and those with mental health issues.
And Heidi and I are working to help spread that, push that out to all of the areas around us.
Yeah.
Those little blue pockets, and help you grow.
Right.
Those red areas, let's see what we can do.
Well, in issues like these cases that are going before the Supreme Court plays into the narrative that causes the Great Red Divide, which is basically a lot of grass and cows. But we need to understand that...
butter cow.
Yeah, I love the butter cow.
Sorry, I had to throw butter cow in there for some reason.
I could go for a cream puff right now. Anyway, but so when they push the narrative of division and they divide us further from one another, and humanity divided from each other fights. When we're united on common causes for the common good, we get along really well. You don't hear the saber rattling of LGBTQ. You don't hear the saber rattling of reproductive rights. You don't hear the saber rattling of drug abuse. You don't hear the saber rattling about income disparity, because we start taking care of one another. And I want you to know that are listening that when we're divided, those that pull our strings win every time. We have to work towards protecting one another. I don't care if somebody looks different than you and maybe doesn't think exactly like you. The United States was created to allow for that independent thinking, for that independent study of religion, for that independent study of humanity, for freedom and rights. And those things change over time. Yes.
When this very this country I don't believe that anyone was even familiar with the Muslim religion, or they were very.
Well, yes, they did. Thomas Jefferson.
I'm talking back in England.
Oh yeah, they would have.
They
did a lot of trading with the Ottoman Empire.
Oh yeah.
So, and the thing is people who were Muslim were considered very spiritual.
Native American.
Oh no, we just wiped them out.
Yeah, we did.
And I'm going to give another plug for my philosophy on until this country turns and faces the horrors we caused through slavery and the extermination of, and it is extermination, the genocide of the native peoples. Until we turn and face that and make reparations and apologies for that, we will never be a whole society. So I don't want to add further damage to the LBGTQ community through legislation like this to make our evil worse. If anything, our society was founded on the basis that you can be who you are. And you're giving that very puzzled look, Murray. But
no,
that's my soapboxing.
I'm 100% on board with everything that you're saying.
I think that especially with the underlying racism, because we've never, ever turned and faced it. We've never turned around and looked back at what we've done with open eyes and an apologetic heart and contrition, empathy, compassion for what we did, what my ancestors.
So it all boils down. We've talked a lot about the legislation and about the laws and the judicial branch, and we've talked before about the vulnerabilities in our government and the holes that are there.
The last 3 years, every vulnerability has been exploited to the nth degree.
But if we go back to the founding fathers,
yes,
and we look at the actual Constitution,
mm-hmm.
that pretty much answers every question we have.
Right.
But judges have ruled in different ways based on society have been influenced.
Yes.
They have been influenced by religion, politics, and money. Legislators have been
Money.
Religion,
Money.
Politics, and money.
Money and power.
Money
and power. Money and power.
And that's the really sad part about this is the perversion of being a strict constitutionalist for your own ends. Like you had said, we shouldn't have to put laws in that specifically identify transgender
And excludes.
right, and that's not that we shouldn't have those laws, but basic human rights. By acknowledging it as being a human right, whether you're transgender, whether you're Muslim, whether you're
a human.
Irish,
You have rights.
a human. Basic. We should have all the rest
You're
of
a
this
human.
adjusted here.
You have
to
rights.
those fundamental principles.
Inalienable rights to be just as you were made, to
And-
live the life that you desire, to reach for the stars if that's what you want, or sit in a hammock and read a book. And I don't give a damn who you date or if you wear a skirt. Oh man. So I'm going to take a little segue here. Billy Porter from, what was it? Was it the Met Gala? Not the Met Gala, the one he did before. Remember he came in that ball gown tux? Oh my God. Look up Billy Porter and look for fabulous.
Yes.
So I don't care if men wear skirts. If you can rock it like Billy Porter.
Well, there are several cultures that wore skirts all the time.
My
and still
ancestors were
do.
Scots and wore kilts.
I mean, come on. Everything changes throughout society,
Yeah.
but that's the perversion of the Christian influence.
Some Christian influence.
No, I'm not saying
Yeah.
all. I know there's good Christians out there and good churches and good faiths, but there's a lot that aren't, and the ones that aren't are the ones that have the voice right now and the megaphones, and they're the ones that have twisted things like being a human being, regardless of who you are, respecting someone for their rights. They're the ones that are saying, oh, no, you're different. We don't like that. And where does that come from? That comes from the conservative religious right.
That does not come from Jesus.
No, it doesn't. So I guess we wanted to talk to you today about, why this case is so important. And it's getting a little overshadowed because,
We are so outraged.
We abandoned the Kurds.
Yes.
And we're like, hey, we don't really need you anymore, which is, I can't even.
Murray, those people are being slaughtered. They're being slaughtered. They are our friends.
Yeah, well, we definitely need to talk about that and why it happens, but not today. So we just wanted you guys to understand that when these cases come before Supreme Courts, they are so important, and maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe they should just be based. We should all just treat people as humans, equal, humans, sentient beings.
Right. I get so tired of the labels, and I know from the study that I did in college and through my life is that whenever they can put you in like in a spreadsheet and you're in this category or that category, instead of you are all human, when they separate you like that, that's when we're in trouble. That is when they divide us
human
and
nature,
conquer
I
us.
think, will always look to find a way to separate themselves from each other.
Of
It goes back
course.
to Dr. Seuss's The Star-Bellied Sneetches.
Well,
I've talked about this before.
And I've talked to you about one of my favorite books of all time, Carl Sagan's Shadows of Forgotten Ancestry. Where are we on the book scale today?
Listen, Dr. Seuss is a
Carl
god.
Sagan.
If there's a god, it's Dr. Seuss.
Oh no, and
I'm telling
Carl
you,
Sagan's sitting right there with them.
Star-bellied Sneetches. But that's the whole thing. It's just nature. We always want to feel superior to someone in some way.
And I get
I
that.
think that we can overcome that nature-wise if we can take the nurture out of it, if we can stop creating that division. But it's a chicken
Perpetuating.
egg. Because if you don't, that's like saying, I don't see color. We need to
all see color.
redefine that as not that I don't see it, I acknowledge it.
I accept that
you
we're all
are
different.
your own person, and you should be treated as such.
We're all supposed to be different. I told you, my mother said if we were all exactly alike, we'd get bored with each other. That's why we come in all different colors and sizes and shapes and flavors, and that's how I was raised, Murray. And what an easy way to look at humanity. Then so
It boggles my mind. So let's keep our fingers crossed that Gorsuch really does follow the textual context of the law, and that the argument was strong enough. So they'll have an answer by June. if we hear anything else, updates, we will promise to keep you updated.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Check us out. The Federalist we talk about.
Federal Society.
Good.
Go back and listen to that one because it was a good
It's
one.
definitely a good show.
And, find us at www.heartlandmamas.com.
MAMAS.
And-
YouTube,
Yeah, just Google
Twitter,
us.
Facebook. We're
Yeah.
everywhere.
And we're preparing to go out and do our Heartland Mamas
Debate
tour. So that's coming up the 15th of October. So if you'd like us to come and sit at your debate,
Let us know.
hit us up. We've been just about everywhere. So take care now.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.